Hello and welcome back to Business with Smith Co. Today we're going to be talking about the secondary sector. So when you're looking at sectors of the economy, you have to think, you've got your primary sector, and that is very important, and you could definitely argue that it's the most important one. Everyone who works in the primary sector, your jobs are very, very, very important, because without that, nothing else happens. I guess you could say automation technically, but you know what I mean. Like, at the end of the day, the primary sector is important, whether it's job or just the work being done. But the secondary sector is also very important, because the secondary sector includes things such as the building industry, technology, food processing, clothing. There are some foods which are pretty much either poisonous or that's not very healthy for people to eat, or sometimes it's just not very nice to eat. And of course, that means that humans can have a more wider meal. And of course, you need to clothe everyone, and that's where you can buy my merch. It's whatchamacallit, the manufacturing sectors that you see here are also included within this. Because when you're looking at things like agribusinesses that take farm kind of goods that are just basic raw materials and then transform them into food that consumers are going to buy, they're processing these raw materials, obviously, from the primary sector, and then you can argue they add value to the goods and they create jobs in the industry. A lot of the time, agribusinesses in countries can really, it can have a lot of big output, because, maybe not an individual business, but the point is, unlike other goods, like if I said, buy my new phone, it's just out. I mean, you don't have to buy a phone necessarily. There are some people who would choose not to, be watched and constantly have your data collected and everything you say recorded and filtered back to us, but and of course all the other people who will also be looking at you via this phone. But you could buy it. Well, so I go, no, I'm not going to. So obviously they don't, and that's the kind of thing here. There's a lot of industries that they may have a large foothold in the market. They may have the majority of consumers buying their product, not necessarily for an individual business, but the actual sector. But when you're looking at the agribusinesses, almost 100% of people are going to buy food via agribusinesses. Whether that is just sort of very simple, just basic packaging of raw goods, and then the consumer will do what they do, what they want with it, or whether it's kind of processed thing. Whatever the case may be, at the end of the day, agribusinesses will oftentimes, be a very large area there, because a lot of people will buy from them. Now, obviously, they also have a lot of competition, because their products are basically just it doesn't really, there's not really much to be done. It's a food, unless you're processing it too much, then you're not going to make the food taste better, because it's a food. The only way you make it taste better is if you process it, and then if processing it, it's going to cause health problems, and that's the kind of thing there. So there's kind of an issue of competition. Although some businesses, oftentimes in a lot of countries, will have monopoly in certain areas of agribusinesses. Anyway, this is getting a bit too in depth, I guess, what you'd say. But see, a lot of countries, agribusinesses would oftentimes export a lot in a lot of countries, because, at the end of the day, foods are one of those things, unlike other kind of things, where it's like, I don't really want to buy from you, because we have that, we don't want that, and all the other things. And while some businesses will, obviously, like if you look at things like, there's all sorts of industries that, you kind of need, but that's when you only need it because people say you need it, that kind of thing. But for food, everyone needs food. That's the thing. Everyone needs food. You won't survive if you don't have the food. So that's the key thing. So a lot of the time there's that benefit where it's like, I'm going to export this. I'm going to import this. I need food. It's just a really basic thing. And a lot of the time, a lot of people can be employed here. Although the main problem with this is, of course, in modern day, the secondary sector when it comes to food can be a bit of a rough place. working conditions aren't always great. If you look at meatpacking is oftentimes quite a, packed in, sort of situation. It's not a lot of things in the agri businesses don't tend to be very nice. Unless, of course, you're, a manager, in which case you'd probably be fine. I'm just saying anyone out there who's thinking of taking a management position or maybe like a senior executive position in an agribusiness, no, you're fine. Not even the actual people who are actually doing some work, in the agribusiness. Those are what we're talking about. But that's the kind of thing I have there where businesses will oftentimes employ good few people, although sometimes nowadays automation brings in this whole sort of thing. Anyway, you also have the whole idea of, indigenous firms, because unlike other areas where you oftentimes will have, cheaper costs, so you buy from elsewhere, maybe the product is better, you buy it elsewhere, maybe it isn't made in your country, you'll buy it elsewhere, or from elsewhere rather, and there's all these kind of things you have here where a lot of industries will basically be mainly multinationals, and now you might buy from your local shop to get the product, but at the end of the day, that product is still coming from a multinational. It doesn't just because you're not. If you buy something in your supermarket, a lot of supermarkets will oftentimes, they will have foods from all different countries, and that's the key thing. Foods are one of those things where, you people will buy foods from their own country. People will buy food from other countries. People will buy food from other places. That's the thing. Like, foods from your own country tend to have this better kind of factor because it's like, well, how are they different? It's food. There's a certain cap on quality. That there really is. And that's the kind of thing. You also have the whole system that's after agribusiness, which was a long time right there, but also the construction industry. Now, the construction industry is oftentimes very important. That doesn't necessarily mean jobs. It just means that, housing is a very, very important thing to have. Very, very important. And it's very, it's a very kind of, it's one of those industries which oftentimes is not always, it's not always met the best. So you'll see this a lot with homelessness and everything. Well, houses, do cost a lot. If you took, let's say, a couple of 100 million, you could probably, I'm just saying, a couple of million, and a whole lot of countries' homelessness problems could be dealt with. You just did it in a correct manner. The point is that would not require, a couple of 100 million, boom, you've solved all those problems, and that's the key thing there. That's the key thing. When people have this thing, a lot of time there's homelessness across the world. That means that the construction industry is oftentimes underused. And the problem being, if you don't have houses being built, you also have a reduction in jobs, and you also have problems with the economy. People aren't housed, and that means they have to spend money on all sorts of things that they wouldn't need to if they had housing. That's the sort of thing you have here. That's the key. These are the key kind of problems you have here. But you also have pharmaceuticals and chemicals. Now, pharmaceutical companies are a very large output in the secondary sector, which is strange because it's like, but you're producing a good where you have, sometimes some pharmaceutical companies are, they're known for basically producing goods that are completely useless, but you know what I mean, like they're not always the best pharmaceutical companies. They're oftentimes very dodgy, and there are good few pharmaceutical companies that are either outside the law or just edging near it. And there's all these kind of things here where you're saying, that the pharmaceutical industries are often very, very big companies. Now, obviously, when you're talking about all these kind of things, and you're saying, you're looking at things like, agri-foods and all these sort of things, obviously, I should mention, actually, sorry for not mentioning this at the start, agri-foods refers to the full agricultural produce, so that'd be dairy, meat, fish, grains, crops, all that sort of stuff, not just the meats or things, but all the all the kind of agricultural things. But that's the kind of thing you have there. You know, there's a lot of the time you look at these sort of things and thinking, okay, yeah. You know, there are various things for around the secondary sector, and yeah, at the end of the day, you know, you have to think, well, yeah, but what about the trends that affect it? You know, because that's one of the things that you talk about, and the trends that affect the business really, and what exactly that does. You know, what are those trends? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in the next video. Please don't understand. If not, you can view the videos and you call it about the drama. Maybe absolutely perfection. Don't remember the other videos, but not in the future. This is bye bye, and I hope you will enjoy the rest of your existence.